Nothing compares to the promise I have. Nothing compares to the promise I have in you.
For this commandment, which I command you today, is not too difficult for you, nor is it out of reach. It's not in heaven, that you should say, who will go to heaven for us to get it for us and make us hear it, that we may observe it? Nor is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will cross the sea for us to get it for us and make us hear it, that we may observe it? But the word is very near you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may observe it. See, I have set before you today life and prosperity, and death and adversity. In that I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his commandments, his statutes, his judgments, that you may live and multiply, and that the Lord your God may bless you in the land which you're entering in to possess. But if your heart turns away and you do not obey, but are drawn away and worship other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you shall surely perish. You will not prolong your days in the land that you're crossing the Jordan to enter and possess it. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. So choose life in order that you may live, you and your descendants, by loving the Lord your God, by obeying his voice, by holding fast to him. For this is your life and the length of your days, that you may live in the land which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give them. May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word. There was a man that was known as a man of few words. Obviously, he wasn't a Baptist preacher, right? One day he heard a knock on his door, and he answered the door, and there stood a young lady, and she was selling a particular line of cosmetics. So she said, "Is your wife at home?" And he replied, "No." She said, "Well, do you mind if I wait for her to return?" So without saying a word, he just opened the door a little farther and pointed to a chair. She went in and sat down, and seemed like quite a while to her, so she said, "Do you know when your wife is going to be back?" "No." So a few more minutes passed, and she said, "Well, where is your wife anyway?" He said, "The cemetery." A few more minutes passed, and he said, "Well, how long has she been down there?" He said, 9 years. Well, in this particular passage, we have the covenant in just a few words. When I read it, it really amazed me at how much is packed in these few verses. As a matter of fact, the covenant is really summarized in verse 15. I have set before you today life and prosperity, and death and adversity. Now, we cannot always just pick a passage out of the Old Testament and claim it for ourselves, and it is true that this is primarily referring to the covenant with Israel. But it is equally true for us today. God has set before us life and adversity, good and bad. But not only that, notice what he says about this passage. Not only is it really, really short, it's simple. Matter of fact, he spends most of the time telling us that the question placed before us is a simple question. Look at verse 11. For the commandment which I command you today is not too difficult for you. It is not out of reach. Don't you sit there and tell me, well, Moses, I don't understand it. He says it's not in heaven in verse 12 that you should say, who will go to heaven for us to get it for us and make us hear it that we may observe it? It's not too high. It's not across the sea. He said, you don't have to go across the ocean and get somebody to bring it back and interpret it for you. You don't need a PhD from the seminary to tell you what this passage says. It is short, it is simple, and it is to the point. What is then the point? Look at the two decisions in 15 and in 19. But before we really try to interpret it, let's see if I can help you understand it a little bit by taking a sample survey here this morning. Do you like sample surveys? I said sample, not simple, okay? You have your choice. Which one do you choose? You can be listed in Who's Who, or you can be number one on the FBI's 10 most wanted. Which do you choose? Who's Who, I hope, right? Well, let's get it a little better. You can have a surprise birthday party, whenever your birthday is, in which you'll receive a lot of clothes and a lot of electronic gadgets. Or you can have a surprise visit from the IRS and they confiscate all of your electronic gadgets and your clothes. Which do you choose? Oh, everybody loves a visit from the IRS, right? Well, let's see. You can have an all-expense paid dinner at the Outback in Huntsville, or you can have a root canal by a dentist that has run out of Novocaine. Which do you choose? Nobody voting for the root canal? I've had a few, by the way, and I tried to get my dentist to put it in writing, and they won't. They say, open wide and open. I said, why is it go? You have a little mouth. I've been told that, yeah, but I won't get it. They won't put it in writing for me. Anyway, another choice. An all-expense paid Caribbean cruise with all of the perks, and it's not one of those Caribbean cruises where you get out there and the ship dies or catches on fire. Everything goes well. Or you can have gallbladder surgery with staph infection, and when you get home, you got one of those letters that said if you want to keep your health insurance, you can keep your health insurance, but guess what? It's just been canceled. And you owe a horrendous bill. Which do you choose? The cruise over the gallbladder surgery, Well, look at what this is saying. And he says it is a simple solution. It's not difficult to understand. God has set before you life and good, death and evil. The New American Standard says he set before you prosperity and adversity. Which do you want? This word prosperity means all types of success. It means physical health. It means financial increase. It means honor by society. As a matter of fact, the word is translated 13 different ways by the New American Standard. Now, that's not to say they don't understand how to translate it. What it is indicating is that it means happy, pleasant, prosperity, what is good, a wide variety of good things. The word adversity means all types of failure. It is a failure in health. It is a failure in wealth. It is a failure in honor. Perhaps you're thinking, well, you know, preacher, your survey was kind of stupid. That's the point. He sets before us prosperity or adversity. Which do you want? People say that, right? I mean, that's a simple choice. But many people, if not the majority of people, are choosing adversity. That's about as smart as choosing surgery over a cruise. Now, where on earth do I get that? Well, look at verse 16 and 17. You see, the decision is not based solely on preference, but performance. Now, I'm not talking about earning salvation, but I am talking about what we do says, points to, states what we really believe. It's not as popular by any means to be a Christian today as it used to be, but I'll bet if you stop most people on the streets of Fayetteville and you said, would you rather go to heaven or hell? I believe most people are going to say heaven. That's what they say. That's their preference. But by their performance, by their life, they're saying something different. Because you see, he says we choose adversity when we reject God's way. And he describes God's way for us. It is to love the Lord your God. Over and over and over again in the Old Testament, we're told to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. That is a commandment. Have you ever really sat down and thought about love being a commandment? Do you think it'll work? We have 2 grown daughters, and they're biological sisters as well, and they were close to the same age. So you know what brothers and sisters do, right? They fight. And they would get into it, and I had this mean, sneaky punishment. I'd make them come into the living room or the den, wherever we all were, and I would demand that they hug each other, and you ought to have seen it. And tell each other that they loved them. I love you. You could just feel the love. You believe that? You can tell, order, pass laws all you want to, but it won't work. Then what on earth does this mean? Well, one writer by the name of Tige, not any relation to me, said that it means to act lovingly and loyally toward God. To act lovingly and loyally toward God. Did you know your actions can overrule your feelings? For many of you, that will happen when the alarm clock goes off in the morning.